2023. 8 o'clock in the morning. A young mother walks into a Winona daycare center, hand in hand with her 5-year-old daughter and 2-year-old son. She kisses them goodbye. She smiles at the daycare workers. She walks back to her blue Chrysler van with the father of her children. In exactly 97 minutes, 26-year-old Madeline Kingsbury would become one of the most searched for missing persons in Minnesota history. Her phone, her purse, her plans to work at Mayo Clinic that day, all abandoned. Her body would be discovered 68 days later, wrapped in a bedsheet, concealed off a remote highway near the Iowa border. The man who last saw her alive? The father of those 2 children she kissed goodbye. But this isn't just a story about a murder. This is about how a relationship that produced 2 beautiful children became a nightmare that would consume a community, mobilize hundreds of searchers, and reveal a pattern of control and violence that had been building for years. How does the person you trust most become the person you should fear the most? To understand what happened to Madeline Jane Kingsbury, you need to know who she really was. Born in 1996 in Winona, Minnesota, to Krista Neighbor and David Kingsbury, Maddie was the kind of child who filled every room with energy and joy. Her family remembers her as the little girl who would follow them around the house, chattering away constantly. Even as an adult, that vibrant, talkative spirit never left her. She loved to sing, and those who knew her say she had a beautiful voice that could light up any gathering. Maddie was brilliant. She graduated from Winona State University with the kind of grades that opened doors. But more than her intelligence, it was her caring nature that defined her. Friends described her as fearless, quirky, and endlessly compassionate. At just 26, Maddie had built an impressive career as a clinical research coordinator at the world-renowned Mayo Clinic in Rochester. For over 2.5 years, she worked in human subjects research, focusing on public health, infectious disease, and occupational medicine. Work that literally saved lives. But her greatest pride was her children, a 5-year-old daughter and 2-year-old son who were the center of her universe. Colleagues at Mayo Clinic knew her as the researcher who never missed work. Friends knew her as the mom who would do anything for her kids. On the surface, Maddie's life looked like the American dream. A successful career in medical research, 2 healthy, beautiful children, a home in the quiet city of Winona, where everyone knew their neighbors and crime was something that happened to other people in other places. Her favorite color was blue. She was known for lighting up every birthday party, every family gathering, every workplace meeting with her infectious laugh and genuine interest in everyone around her. To her co-workers, she was the colleague who remembered your birthday. To her family, she was the daughter and sister who could make any problem seem solvable. Every morning, Maddie had her routine down to a science. Drop the kids at daycare, drive 40 minutes to Rochester, spend her day conducting research that could help patients around the world, pick up the kids, make dinner, read bedtime stories, an ordinary suburban life that countless mothers across America would recognize. But behind closed doors, Maddie's life wasn't peaceful, it was suffocating. Adam Matthew Fravel was 29 years old when he met Madeline. College sweethearts who seemed to have found their perfect match. He was charming, attentive, everything a young woman could want in a partner. Their relationship moved quickly. First came love, then their daughter in 2018, followed by their son in 2021. For a while, it looked like a fairy tale. 2 young parents building a life together in southeastern Minnesota. But fairy tales, as we all know, can quickly turn into nightmares. The COVID-19 pandemic changed everything. Like millions of families across America, financial pressures mounted. Work became uncertain. The stress of being confined together, day after day, began to crack the foundation of their relationship. Friends and family testified that Madeline was carrying the entire household on her shoulders. Her father, David Kingsbury, would later tell jurors that his daughter did all the heavy lifting in her relationship with Fravel. She was working full-time at Mayo Clinic, managing the children, handling the finances, keeping the house running. But Adam Fravel was changing. The charming college boyfriend was becoming someone else entirely. Prosecutors would later describe him as abusive and controlling consumed by jealousy over any interaction Madeline had with the outside world. He began monitoring her communications, questioning her movements, demanding to know where she was, who she was with, what she was doing every minute of every day. Friends noticed the changes. They saw the fear creeping into Madeline's eyes. Madeline's friends testified that they witnessed incidents of domestic abuse, as well as bruises on the late Winona mother's body. The physical violence was escalating, but there was something even more terrifying happening. In 2021, the nation was captivated by the murder of Gabby Petito, the young woman killed by her fiancé during a cross-country trip. The case dominated headlines for months, and Adam Fravel was paying close attention. Adam Fravel once told Madeline Kingsbury, if she did not listen up, she would end up like Gabby Petito, according to court documents. He allegedly warned her she'd end up like slain van life vlogger Gabby Petito if she wasn't careful. When confronted about this threat during his trial, Fravel would dismiss it as a joke. But for Madeline, living with those words every day, there was nothing funny about it. Katie Coca and Haley Scott both testified that Kingsbury confided in them that Fravel had choked her in front of the kids, and they each told her to leave the relationship and seek help. But Madeline faced the impossible choice that traps so many victims of domestic violence. How do you leave when your children are involved? How do you protect them when leaving might make things worse? Madeline continued the on and off relationship with Fravel, the father of her 2 children, for a couple more years. The abuse continued to escalate. The threats became more frequent, more specific, more terrifying. Judge Nancy Beitendorf would later note the profound effect of his abuse, a pattern of behavior that led him ultimately to kill his former partner. And then, in early 2023, something changed. Kingsbury's new relationship with an old friend from college led Fravel to commit what prosecutors called homicidal violence. Madeline had found the courage to move on. She was ready to build a new life, free from Adam Fravel's control. But freedom for Madeline Kingsbury would come at the ultimate price. She said he was getting worse, that the threats were becoming more frequent. She was terrified, but she felt trapped. Said her friend, March 31st, 2023, the last morning of Madeline Kingsbury's life. By early 2023, Madeline Kingsbury had reached a breaking point. Behind Adam Fravel's back, she was quietly making plans. Plans that would change everything. Plans that would ultimately cost her life. She didn't want to move near Adam's parents. Despite pressure from Fravel, Madeline was determined to build an independent life for herself and her children. She was looking for her own place, her own space, her own freedom. And then something unexpected happened. An old friend from college reached out. Spencer Sullivan. They had history, a connection that went back years before Adam Fravel ever entered the picture. What started as innocent reconnection quickly became something more. Spencer Sullivan would later testify that he was dating Madeline Kingsbury at the time of her disappearance. In the spring of 2023, Maddie knew her relationship with Fravel was falling apart, and she was ready to move on. But Adam Fravel was watching. He was always watching. According to Spencer Sullivan's statement to investigators when Fravel discovered their relationship, Madeline would have to make her phone untraceable when they met because Fravel would text her nonstop. The psychological control was becoming physical violence. Prosecutors would describe how Fravel's jealousy and selfishness caused him to strike out. The slapping of her face, shoving her into counters, strangulation. The abuse was escalating to levels that terrified everyone who witnessed it. Family friend Sarah Hultgren testified that Madeline called her one day, sounding frantic. Hultgren immediately called Madeline's father, David, who told her he knew what was going on and was going to pick up his daughter from the home she shared with Fravel. For a brief moment, it looked like Madeline might finally be free. Her parents sheltered her. They offered her safety. They begged her to stay away from Adam Fravel permanently. But after a number of days, Madeline made a choice that would haunt her family forever. She returned to the house. She continued her relationship with Fravel. She wanted to protect her children's sense of normal life, to keep their family intact, to give them stability. That choice may have sealed her fate. Spencer Sullivan would later tell investigators that when Fravel found out about their relationship, Sullivan ended his contact with Madeline. The pressure, the threats, the constant surveillance, it was too much. Even her new relationship couldn't survive under Adam Fravel's obsessive control. By March 2023, Adam Fravel's world was collapsing. He was jealous, unemployed, and faced with the reality that he would have to move back in with his parents. Life as he knew it was ending, and he could feel Madeline slipping away from his control. The violence was reaching a crescendo. Friends noticed more bruises on Madeline's body. She confided that the physical abuse was getting worse. The threats were becoming more frequent, more specific, more terrifying. Prosecutors would argue that Fravel realized his degrading comments no longer worked. The slapping, the shoving, the strangulation, none of it was enough to keep Madeline under his control. She was determined to leave. She was building a new life. She was choosing freedom over fear. But Adam Fravel had made his own choice. If he couldn't control Madeline Kingsbury, no one could have her. She wanted to protect her children's normal life. She wanted to give them stability and security. She wanted to be a good mother, even if it meant staying in a dangerous situation just a little bit longer. But for victims of domestic violence, there is no such thing as just a little bit longer. Every day, every hour, every minute becomes a countdown to catastrophe. March 31st, 2023. The last day of Madeline Kingsbury's life was about to begin. March 31st, 2023 started like any other Friday. Madeline had her routine down to a science. Get the kids ready. Drop them at daycare with Adam. Head to work in Rochester. A 40-minute drive she made 5 days a week. At 8 a.m., surveillance cameras captured Madeline and Adam Fravel walking into the daycare center with 5-year-old daughter and 2-year-old son. The children were dropped off. The couple walked back to Madeline's blue 2014 Chrysler Town and Country van. 8:17 a.m., the last confirmed sighting of Madeline Kingsbury alive. Security footage shows the van leaving the daycare parking lot. Adam Fravel would later claim he was dropped off at Madeline's residence on 5th Street, that she drove away to work, that he never saw her again. But Madeline never made it to work. Her colleagues at Mayo Clinic waited. Her phone went straight to voicemail. By 10 a.m., her absence was noted. By afternoon, alarm bells were ringing. Because Madeline Kingsbury never missed work. Ever. When investigators first questioned Adam Fravel about Madeline's disappearance, his story seemed straightforward. Almost too straightforward. Fravel told police he had left the home in Kingsbury's van around 10:30 a.m. on March 31st to take some belongings to his parents' home in Mabel. He said Kingsbury had told him she was going to do some work downstairs in her office and head into work in Rochester after. A simple story, a routine trip, an innocent explanation for why he had the van that morning. But there was one problem with Adam Fravel's story. He didn't know that cameras were watching. At 9:44 a.m., just over an hour after dropping the children at daycare, security cameras near Kingsbury's home captured something that would destroy Fravel's entire story. Law enforcement were able to obtain security footage from the area near Kingsbury's home. Fravel could be seen replacing the front license plate on Kingsbury's van around 9:45 a.m. Why would someone remove and replace license plates on a routine trip to their parents' house? The answer would become terrifyingly clear. At 10 a.m., more surveillance footage captured Fravel at a local gas station. He came home half an hour later. But investigators discovered something crucial. There was a significant gap of unaccounted time in his story. As investigators dug deeper into the digital evidence, they uncovered a methodical attempt to hide the truth. The GPS tracking on the van had been disabled. The home security system that monitored the townhome Fravel and Kingsbury shared. The last day these cameras were in operation was March 29th, 2023, 2 days before Madeline disappeared. Someone had deliberately turned off the security cameras. Someone who knew they were being watched. Someone who was planning something they didn't want recorded. But the cover-up went even further. At his parents' property in Mabel, surveillance footage from the days surrounding Madeline's disappearance had mysteriously vanished. Critical evidence, deleted from the very location where Fravel claimed he was innocently visiting. Search warrants executed at multiple locations revealed a trail of destruction. Burned electronics, destroyed hard drives, evidence that someone had frantically tried to erase their digital footprint. But perhaps most damning of all were the discoveries that couldn't be erased. In the townhome garage, forensic investigators found evidence that made their blood run cold. Stains on a mattress that tested positive for human blood. Alert signals from cadaver dogs trained to detect the scent of death. A shovel that triggered alerts from those same cadaver dogs. Tools that had been used for purposes far more tragic than gardening. When investigators examined Adam Fravel in the days following Madeline's disappearance, they documented fresh scratches on his arms and hands. Deep, deliberate marks that looked like defensive wounds, the kind left by someone fighting for their life. Fravel's explanation? The scratches came from animals, from working out at the gym. Innocent explanations for suspicious injuries, but investigators weren't buying it. Piece by piece, the investigation was revealing a methodical cover-up. The disabled GPS, the deleted surveillance footage, the burned electronics, the bloodstained mattress, the cadaver dog alerts, the defensive wounds. The picture was becoming clear. This wasn't a disappearance. It was a cover-up. Every piece of digital evidence, every surveillance camera, every forensic test was painting the same picture. Adam Fravel had spent March 31st, 2023, not visiting his parents, but covering up the most heinous crime imaginable. While hundreds of volunteers searched forests and fields for any trace of Madeline Kingsbury, the man they were trying to help had already hidden her body and was methodically destroying the evidence of what he had done. But Adam Fravel had made one critical mistake. In the digital age, nothing truly disappears, and investigators were about to uncover the location where he had hidden Madeline's body. For 68 days, hundreds of volunteers had searched every field, every forest, every ditch in southeastern Minnesota. The massive volunteer effort called Finding Madeline Kingsbury had mobilized an entire community, but it was a targeted law enforcement search that would finally bring answers. June 7, 2023. After analyzing surveillance footage, cell phone data, and following leads about Adam Fravel's movements, investigators focused their search on a specific area, a remote stretch along Highway 43, north of Mabel, Minnesota, property that Adam Fravel knew well. The location was no accident. This was land maintained by Fravel's father, property where Adam had spent time, property where he knew every hidden corner, every abandoned structure, every place where something could be concealed forever. At first, investigators didn't see anything unusual, just overgrown ditches, fallen logs, the normal debris of a rural roadside. But then someone noticed something that made their blood run cold. Flies, swarming around what looked like ordinary logs in a ditch. But as they moved closer, they spotted something that would haunt them forever. A gray fitted bedsheet, partially concealed under a pile of logs and debris, hidden in a culvert where no casual passerby would ever look. What they found inside that bedsheet would confirm every investigator's worst fears. Madeline Jane Kingsbury, missing for 68 days, had been discovered. But the manner of her concealment revealed the calculated cruelty of her killer. Madeline's body was wrapped in a gray fitted sheet. The sheet was sealed with Gorilla Tape. Inside, she was also wrapped in a towel and a pillowcase, layer after layer of covering, designed to contain and conceal. When forensic scientists examined the materials used to wrap Madeline's body, they made discoveries that would prove crucial at trial. The fitted sheet, the towel, the tape. Forensic analysis would show these items match materials found in the home Madeline shared with Adam Fravel. Danielle Smith, a forensic scientist with the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, examined the fitted sheet and tape. Under microscopic analysis, fibers from the materials matched samples taken from Fravel's minivan, the same vehicle he had used on March 31st. But perhaps most damning of all was what investigators found on the Gorilla Tape itself. Fingerprints. Clear, identifiable fingerprints that matched only one person. Adam Matthew Fravel. Dr. Michael McGee, the medical examiner who conducted Madeline's autopsy, delivered findings that confirmed what investigators suspected. The cause of death, asphyxiation. Madeline Kingsbury had been smothered to death. Prosecutor Phil Prokopowicz would later tell the jury that Kingsbury had been strangled with a towel and died of asphyxiation. The towel, bedsheet, and tape matched items found in their Winona home. Every piece of physical evidence pointed to the same conclusion. The medical examiner concluded she had died of homicidal violence by asphyxiation, though the body was too decomposed after 68 days to reveal additional evidence of the struggle that had ended her life. When Madeline's father, David Kingsbury, was allowed to see his daughter's remains, he collapsed over her body. The vibrant young woman who had filled every room with laughter and joy was gone forever. But even in death, Madeline Kingsbury would have the last word. The evidence wrapped around her body, hidden in that remote culvert, would ensure that her killer faced justice. On June 8, 2023, one day after Madeline's body was discovered, Adam Fravel was arrested and charged with her murder. On June 8, 2023, 24 hours after Madeline's body was discovered, Adam Matthew Fravel was arrested and charged with her murder, for separate charges that would ensure he would never walk free again. First-degree murder while committing domestic abuse with a past pattern of domestic violence. First-degree premeditated murder. 2 counts of second-degree murder. The charges painted a picture of a calculated killer who had methodically planned and executed the murder of his children's mother. Throughout his arrest and trial, Fravel maintained his innocence. He refused to cooperate with investigators. He showed no remorse, no emotion, no acknowledgement of the devastation he had caused. Even when faced with overwhelming evidence, he continued to deny his guilt. But while Adam Fravel sat in his jail cell preparing for trial, another battle was being fought in family court. A custody battle that would determine the fate of Madeline's 2 young children, a 5-year-old daughter and 2-year-old son who had lost their mother to their father's violence. Madeline's parents, David and Krista, filed a petition for permanent legal custody of their daughter's children. They were determined that these innocent victims would never be subjected to their father's influence again. On June 30th, 2023, the custody battle came to an end. Madeline Kingsbury's parents were granted sole custody of her children. The judge's ruling ensured that Adam Fravel would never have access to the children whose mother he had murdered. But Madeline's story was resonating far beyond the courtroom. Her disappearance had united the Winona area in a campaign to find her. Her murder would spark a movement to save others from her fate. Candlelight vigils were held to honor Kingsbury and raise domestic violence awareness. The vigil, scheduled for June 1st, 2024 at Levy Park in Winona, was organized by family and friends to help break the silence around domestic violence. Her name became a rallying cry. Her story became a warning. Her death became a catalyst for change in a community that refused to let her memory fade into statistics. The Madeline Kingsbury Foundation, where joy trickles in, was established by her family to provide awareness and education, along with resources and reprieve for people who are in similar situations to what Madeline was in. Since the organization's formation, the Madeline Kingsbury Foundation has raised close to $3,000 to give back to communities and organizations working within the domestic violence world. As one advocate said, domestic violence is really so prevalent and people don't really talk about it. 16 months after his arrest, Adam Fravel's trial began in Blue Earth County. The case had been moved from Winona County because of extensive media coverage and community awareness that made finding an impartial jury impossible. The courtroom was packed every day. Madeline's family sat in the front row, facing the man who had stolen their daughter, their sister, their friend. Adam Fravel's family sat on the opposite side, still supporting him despite the overwhelming evidence. After 1 month of testimony, the jury deliberated for less than 24 hours. Their verdict was unanimous and decisive, guilty on all counts. On December 17, 2024, Judge Nancy Beitendorf sentenced Adam Fravel to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Before delivering the mandatory sentence, the judge noted the profound effect of his abuse, a pattern of behavior that led him ultimately to kill his former partner. Adam Fravel, now 30 years old, will spend the rest of his life behind bars. He will never see his children grow up. He will never experience freedom again. He will never have the chance to hurt another woman the way he hurt Madeline Kingsbury. But even from his prison cell, Adam Fravel continues to maintain his innocence. In March 2025, he filed an appeal with the Minnesota Supreme Court. The appeal is expected to take years to resolve, extending his victim's suffering even longer. The murder of Madeline Kingsbury wasn't sudden. It wasn't unexpected. It wasn't unpredictable. The warning signs had been flashing red for months, maybe years. But like so many victims of domestic violence, Madeline was trapped by hope, by love for her children, by the belief that somehow things would get better. The signs were all there. The jealousy that consumed Adam Fravel whenever Madeline interacted with anyone outside his control. The threats that grew more specific and more terrifying. The isolation that cut her off from support systems. The monitoring of her every movement, every phone call, every text message. Her friends saw the bruises. They heard about the choking incidents. They witnessed the fear in her eyes. They begged her to leave, to seek help, to break free from Adam Fravel's control. But here's the chilling truth that every person watching this needs to understand. Madeline Kingsbury is not unique. Every day in America, approximately 3 women are murdered by their intimate partners. Every day, countless others are living in the same suffocating terror that Madeline experienced. When Adam Fravel told Madeline she would end up like Gabby Petito, he wasn't making an idle threat. He was referencing a pattern of violence that claims victims across this country, across every demographic, in every community. The National Coalition Against Domestic Violence reports that leaving an abusive relationship increases the risk of homicide by 75%. Madeline Kingsbury tried to leave. She paid for that courage with her life. Today, Madeline's children are growing up without their mother. They will never hear her laugh again. They will never feel her arms around them again. They will carry the trauma of losing their mother to their father's violence for the rest of their lives. But Madeline's story doesn't have to end in tragedy. It can be the beginning of awareness. It can be the wake-up call that saves the next victim. It can be the reason someone recognizes the warning signs and acts before it's too late. How many more lives will be lost before these signs are taken seriously? How many more children will grow up without their mothers? How many more families will be shattered by preventable violence? Madeline's story is not just a tragedy, it's a warning. Essays like this are heartbreaking, but they also remind us how important it is to keep these stories alive. That's why I need your help. If Maddie's story moved you, take just a second to hit the like button, because the more people who see this, the more awareness we spread about the warning signs of abuse. I also want to hear what you think. Could this tragedy have been prevented? Do you believe justice will truly be served? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you don't want to miss the next case, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We've got more shocking true crime stories coming, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's next.